Vietnam is a success story.
Welcome to The Executives, the show where we navigate in the intricate world of executive leadership, exploring strategies, insights, and personal stories of successful professionals shaping the global business landscape. I'm your host, Majid, and today we have an amazing guest with us, Dr. Oliver Massman, an esteemed international attorney at law and financial accountant and auditor with a PhD in international business law. With over 2 decades of experience as a commercial lawyer in Vietnam, Dr. Massman is fluent in Vietnamese, and I have witnessed that, and specializes in corporate international taxation, power and water projects, and M&A. He is recognized as a leading lawyer in mergers and acquisitions and plays a pivotal role in advising on the EU-Vietnam Free Trade Agreement. Notably, Dr. Massman is the first foreigner to present in the Vietnamese to the National Assembly of Vietnam and is registered arbitrator at the Vietnam International Arbitration Center. Hello and welcome to the show, Oliver.
Thank you very much, Majid.
Can you kindly introduce us? I was struggling putting everything together quickly for our audience. How should I introduce you? Can you introduce yourself also for our audience?
You can just call me Ollie, no problem, make it simple. I'm practicing in it for more than 25 years, speaking Vietnamese absolutely fluent, and the Vietnamese country to move from one of the poorest countries on earth to a mid-level income country now, and the poster child, the World Bank. Vietnam is a success story.
Interesting. And I have heard you speak on multiple events, and it's always been inspiring with the energy you bring in. And I was super excited. I was like, yes, Dr. Ollie agreed to come as a guest because I was like, it would be good that we can learn from your experience. I love to hear from people's experience. I love to learn from someone who has experience more than me. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Our topic of discussion today will be bridging legal and financial frontiers. Dr. Oliver Massman's pioneering journey in Vietnam's evolving landscape. As you mentioned, Vietnam went from a poor country to becoming a mid-tier country. So the first question, what inspired you to pursue a career in law and finance? And how did you navigate your path to becoming one of the best lawyers, leading lawyers and financial accountant in Vietnam?
Vietnam first time in 1991. At that time, Vietnam was one of the poorest. I was very impressed with the people, the Vietnamese most pragmatic and industrious and hardworking people on earth. I'm coming to Hanoi. The people were very poor and doing business on a family scale. They welcomed me and accepted me as a guest ever. I asked my father for tuition for me to learn. And first, my father told me that I will not pay you a penny because there are countries in Africa when Vietnam has never a chance. But as his son believed in the development of Vietnam, and finally he paid me studying Vietnam. Since then, I have been in Vietnam, and I thank the Vietnamese government and help Vietnam develop.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. It's very interesting how you started. And what are some of the unique challenges you have faced practicing law and accounting in Vietnam compared to, you are originally from Germany, right? Compared to, for example, Germany. Because Germany is a very developed country. Everything is like in the books and everything is very well documented.
How a country, and also much on the mentality of its people.
Mm-hmm.
First, are mostly dogmatic people. They do it by the book and no different.
Mm-hmm.
The Vietnamese are very, very pragmatic. They don't do it by the book. For them, it's important to achieve the goal they want to. And the way. So Vietnamese are very, very pragmatic people. Now, let me give you the answer for Vietnam. What are the unique? Basically, I have faced practicing law in Vietnam compared to other countries. Now, the first key answer is any cooks spoil the broth. What does it mean? The Russians, the Americans came to Vietnam to introduce different legal systems in the last 1,000 years. And it does not help Vietnam in its legal system. Vietnam, when I first visited 91, was not clear and somewhat not enforceable. Vietnam has made remarkable turnaround since WTO except 2007. and the CPTPP and the free trade agreement between Europe. Such agreements streamlined the laws, and the last 10 years saw very positive developments in the legal systems. Huge changes took place.
And it must have been a roller coaster ride. Like there must have been other problems that raised up when you were doing these things, the whole changes and everything, right? Or was it like a very smooth journey?
It was not a smooth journey. In the 90s, when I started, basically, I had to, when I came where foreign investors said, and I told them how good Vietnam will be and is, that it was not very, very easy to convince investors. Totally different now. Now, when I go to events and I present on how good, and they know that Vietnam is a huge opportunity, nearly 100 million people, and the average age is 30.
Okay.
Demographics are also super.
Mm-hmm.
So that is basically the Vietnam and what it is now and what it was in the 90s. In the 90s, not many people wanted to believe in the positive development. 2000 saw it developing, yes. 2007 saw WTO accession, and that was a huge turning point in the belief of, that put Vietnam on the watch list of the world. But now Vietnam is so internationally integrated with the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, the EU-Vietnam Free Trade Agreement, Southeast Asian Economic Community. Now it's basically done, and everybody knows that Vietnam is a good country to invest.
Yeah, and Vietnam is one of the countries that I would love to visit. I visited Thailand. Thailand was amazing. The culture, the people, the food, the weather, everything was really beautiful, beaches and everything. I think Vietnam is very similar, right, in terms of the culture.
Yeah, but yes, it's very similar. But the Vietnamese, the mentality of the Vietnamese is totally different. The Vietnamese are very pragmatic people and hardworking people, and but they are also very friendly and liberal. So I can work as a lawyer in Vietnam. In Thailand, the foreigner working as a lawyer is impossible. Because Thailand closed all legal service sector. Thailand closed the whole legal service sector for foreigners 20 years ago. Totally closed. It's done. You have no chance to work as a foreign lawyer in Thailand. So that's a huge difference. And that's the positive thing of Vietnam. The Vietnamese know me. I'm speaking Vietnamese fluent. I have international experience. I can help them. And they know that. And they make use of it. So that's a difference.
Interesting. And because I live in Germany, right? So as a foreign lawyer in Vietnam, how do you navigate the cultural differences in legal practices and also business ethics? Because Germany and I know, for example, Pakistan, where I come from, they have completely different cultural practice. Like in Pakistan, if someone is half an hour late, it's considered normal. It's like, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, but you have to understand also that the Vietnamese use me sometimes as a role model. So they expect from me punctuality, reliability. They expect that, and they know that, and they like that. If I basically put that on the table, if I walk my talk. So I come from Germany, and in Germany we have to do 2 state examinations to enter the bar, where the second is a judge degree. So I'm holding a German judge degree. We had to learn how to be a lawyer, to advise client, and how to be a judge, and to judge cases from a broader perspective. My education helped me to teach the Vietnamese to practice law on an international context and level. With regard to business ethics, there's still a long way to go for the Vietnamese. Confidentiality, compliance is a principle in other systems. It's not so much a thing in Vietnam in practice. In other words, compliance and confidentiality are still problems. Vietnamese law practitioners should learn more to match international standards. This is very critical.
I see. Interesting. It sounds very similar to Pakistan as well. We have some of those problems as well in Pakistan. And I think it's something that I'm always telling also that, hey, if you want to be successful, learn to be on time, learn to understand what is the meaning of business ethic. And I think the whole point why I started this was that I wanted to learn from really experienced people, because I have 10 years experience. I want to learn from someone like you, for example, who's 20 years, 25 years, has been doing even bigger projects than me. And, because you guys are inspiring. And you remember you were doing a session in Berlin, and I forgot the place with the Ministerium for Hessen, right?
Yeah, last month.
Yeah, last month, and you were there, and I was like, Oliver would be such a perfect guest. Like tons of experience, tons of real examples, can actually bridge, like, for people to understand that, hey, Vietnam has more to offer than just like a beautiful beach or a good food. There is more to offer. They're very hardworking people. I had Vietnamese people in my team, extremely dedicated, like extremely hardworking. I would be surprised. I had to tell them, hey, relax, we have to work 8 hours. It's okay. We will do it tomorrow. It's fine. It's fine. So,
yeah, this is the mentality, what I referred to many times. They're very industrious, hardworking, and pragmatic people. And so I believe very much that the mentality will shape the future of the country.
That's true.
And so this is yeah.
What are some of your most successful cases or successful projects that you have done in your career so far?
The major projects I worked end of the 90s were privately gas financed power plants on a PPP scale, as BOT, build, operate, transfer scale. And this was Phu-My 3, one of the first gas-fired power projects in the Vietnam in the 90s. This is still one of the largest projects and most famous projects until now in Vietnam. Phu-My 2.2, also a very successful, still a top project, guiding project in Vietnam. Then Dung Quat oil refinery, about 20 years ago, Non Chak gas-fired power project, O Mon coal-fired power project, and Mui Ding wind energy project. I've worked on several wind energy, renewable energy, solar projects in Vietnam. Combined for solar, I have done 2.8 gigawatt, just solar, and about 1.2 gigawatt wind. Wow. So that's basically in the last 25 years, hundreds of projects I've worked on. And these listed ones, I have some of the largest ones.
Interesting. Now, because we are talking about project and cases, things that you dealt with, what advice would you give to foreign businesses looking to establish themselves in Vietnam? Because you already mentioned it's a good country, hardworking people. It's a brilliant thing. So, what advice would you give them if someone wants to come to Vietnam and set up their establishment?
You must hire an advisor you can hold responsible for what she is advising you. That's a key issue. What does it mean? Hire an advisor that has a professional international standard liability insurance, so you can hold such advisor responsible for what they advise. It is important to hold them responsible, to be able to hold them responsible. And that's not the case for many professional consultants, lawyers in Vietnam. It is similar to the case where you go to the doctor and he's basically, you tell him, I have problems with the right leg, and he's amputating your left leg. So basically, he's not responsible, and you cannot hold him responsible for what you do. And now you're running along with one leg, just one leg. So it's a symbol, but that's a key issue. You should always look for companies, for law firms that have professional liability insurance with no limit. There's no limit. And so basically, what you have, many cases, they have a limitation. They work on $100 million deals, merger and acquisition, solar plants, wind energy plants, and they have a cap on liability, $50,000. And you even have to sue them in a Vietnamese court for these $55,000, while they do multi-million-dollar deals. So basically, that is not working for a foreign investor. And that's the key. Find advisors you can hold completely responsible. And then you can rely. You don't need to trust. You can rely on those advisors. And they will give you the way for a good investment in Vietnam. That is the key.
Interesting. And because you said already the groundwork for businesses to come in has been set, how do you see the law and finance field evolving in, let's say, the next decade?
Vietnam will standardize internationally more and more. Vietnamese local law will be overwritten by Vietnamese international instruments. There's already the rule that in case of certain commitments and issues that are ruled, if there's an international agreement that Vietnam is member to, the content of that such overrides local law. So basically, the Vietnamese international integration will drive the law and the finance, and I believe that Vietnam will move from a frontier market, which is now frontier market, to an emerging market in the next years, and that will trigger not billions, trillions of investment into it.
Interesting. And because you said now FDI will start coming into Vietnam as well, and on a massive scale, how has globalization affected the legal and financial practices in Vietnam?
One example, the two-way trade between the United States and Vietnam in November 2001 was about 1.5 billion US dollars. When the two countries signed the bilateral trade agreement, I helped to advise on it under Bill Clinton, and I helped to give input on it. In November 2001, in November 2004, after the adoption of the BTA, in November 2001, also the adoption of the bilateral trade agreement, the official gazette was introduced first time in Vietnam. Before the BTA, they had no official gazette, so nobody knew when what law will be in effect.
Mm-hmm.
So that changed completely. And in the end of 2017, many years after the BTA between US and Vietnam, the two-way trade was about $50.8 billion. And it increased to $70.57 billion US dollars in 2019. So you see from 2001, 1 billion to now 80 billion. You know what that means. The Vietnamese have learned that international integration and free trade agreements make them wealthy, make them rich, and they practice it extremely. So they have also a nickname in the internet, the Vietnamese. They are called the Prussians of Asia.
Okay.
The Prussians. So they are more German than we German. They are our predecessors, the Prussians. And so the Vietnamese learned very fast, very pragmatic way. They made use of international integration. They asked the European Union, they asked the WTO to exceed WTO to 2007. Then they basically were asked by the European unions, let's have a free trade agreement. They are the country now, except Singapore in Southeast Asia, that has a free trade agreement.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a huge development. The Vietnamese went to a learning curve, and they learned that they can make business with free trade agreements. So they moved from 1.5 million in 2001 to basically about 80 billion in 2019. That's a huge.
That's a lot. 80
story.
Times. Wow. That's a lot.
They learned their lesson and they learned their way. I was a part of it. This is a story where I was practicing. This is a time where I was practicing in Vietnam, and I was teaching the Vietnamese government officials how to negotiate WTO accession for more than 20 years.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And
to implement. Yeah.
That's brilliant, mind blowing, to be honest, and inspiring as well. And in your role, how do you address issues related to sustainable development and corporate responsibility? Because lawyers have a very critical part there, right?
Yes, sustainable development is not an issue in Vietnam. The Vietnamese recognize they love their country, they love their land, they love their people. They're very nationalistic. Yeah, so they know that they have to develop renewable energy. They made commitments in the Paris Agreement and in other international agreements to reduce carbon emissions, so to reduce CO2 emission. And they are very actively working on. Just to give you one example, in 2017, 6 years ago, no solar power plant was operating in Vietnam. Zero. While you, Majid, and me talking today in November 2023, on the 23rd November, we have more than 17 gigawatt solar power in commercial operation.
That's massive.
That is 6 years. This is when you tell, aside from China, which is huge, any other country in the world does not have this development in that short time.
No.
If we put that in context, so the issue is not anymore electricity generation.
Mm-hmm.
It has covered that, but the key issue is now the transmission, the grid, to upgrade the grid. When the Vietnamese know these issues, and when they are basically with the back to the wall, they work hard on solving.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. That's a very surprising development that they did so much of solar in less than 6 years. Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot. So now I would love to understand how have technological advancements impacted your work in law and finance. We hear this chat GPT and all these fancy words all the time, but from a field where it's not tech driven, like my field is tech driven, I'm a technology guy. How has technology advancements impacted your work?
Majid, in my history, I studied law in the 80s in Germany. There was no internet. So I had to go to the library with hours to look for the right book. Sometimes somebody stole that book. So I never had the chance to access that information. That was in the 80s.
Oh.
Yeah. So that has changed dramatically. The technological advancements have given me the chance to access information in seconds. And these changes are dramatic. So this also helped me in drafting new laws, comparing laws, international standards, and teaching the Vietnamese to adopt international standards dramatically. So the technology is a super highway, information highway. Yeah, and of course, in that time of the development of the internet, the development of Vietnam started to materialize. Mm-hmm. So Vietnam made much use of this internet and social media and so on. Every Vietnamese has not one mobile phone, at least 2 or 3. And my wife, she has 2 mobile phones. And she is in every social media, and she's in every internet and everywhere. She knows much more about TikTok, Instagram, and so on than me. But this is the Vietnamese development. Mm. You know, the Vietnamese are very active in that, and that helped them also to develop, to learn, to know. They're very open people. Very open people.
Interesting. And it's very interesting to know how technology is making an impact. But as a leader in your field, you're one of the leaders, and I'm sure lawyers in Vietnam look up to you probably as an inspiration. How do you mentor and inspire upcoming professionals in law and finance?
I have taught in many seminars and events in the Ministry of Justice and the Foreign Trade University for 2 decades, international law, international legal principles, and business ethics practice. It is key. Yeah, but I have not just taught in Vietnam, but other Asian countries, the Philippines, Thailand. I'm happy to teach in Vietnam because they are so eager to learn. Yeah, they soak up like a swamp. They soak up the knowledge very fast, and they're very hardworking, as we agreed. So this is whenever I come to other countries and I compare them with Vietnam, Southeast Asian countries. Sorry to say that the Vietnamese are ahead of them because they're very tough workers. They're very hard workers. They're focused. So I don't want to talk negative about any other Southeast Asian countries. They're all beautiful. They're all fine. But the mentality is basically forming. The mentality is helping the Vietnamese, their mentality, hardworking, being industrious, focused, to develop fast. Mm-hmm. So that will make Vietnam in the next decades a leading country in Southeast Asia.
Interesting. And One thing when I was thinking of questions for you that came to my mind was, how do you balance the demands of such a high profile career with your personal life? Because you have a very busy schedule. How do you balance, you know?
I'm not. Ask my wife, Ling. She's always complaining. So that's the bottom line. You have to make a decision, and my wife is supporting me there. And of course, private life is suffering, of course. And but I'm so focused, and you have to understand. It's like for me to teach other people, and also to get new clients, and to help these clients to implement the business goals. It's like adrenaline, adrenaline. It's like to get an adrenaline shot, makes me happy to teach foreign investors how to achieve goals. A win-to-win solution between the Vietnamese. And when the Vietnamese telling me, hey, Oli, yesterday I had that. One of the largest steel companies, I don't mention the name of Vietnam, I met here in Brussels, by the way, and in Germany, and they told me, I've never met a foreigner speaking Vietnamese so perfectly like you. Can you help us? And I said, well, I'm here on business, but please, we want to hire you. But just on the spot, just on a second spot. Yeah. Because they saw my Wikipedia. I'm also on Wikipedia. Yeah. They saw that, and we learned a lot about you. It's amazing. We meet you now. We want to hire you. They said, okay, I have to, okay. So we are going to do that now. So this is basically how they learn about me, and when that makes me happy. The more input I give into Vietnam, the more I can get back. So getting back is amazing. And then giving back again. It's a circle. It's a wonderful circle of life.
That's very interesting. You get back, you give back. So a very nice approach. I like that.
It's a spiral. It's an upward spiral.
You're growing all the time. You're because
exactly.
I mean, that's what I'm. Some of my friends are always complaining. Hey, we don't know how to make a reputation. I'm like, just work for it. Like, let your work speak. If you do good work, trust me, people will recognize you like immediately.
I have articles on LinkedIn that have over 40,000 views.
Interesting.
Over 40,000.
That's nice.
And I have thousands of them. So you can imagine. And I would love to write, love to publish about Vietnam, love to make events, present at events. It's my life. I live Vietnam. Vietnam is my turf.
So if I'm visiting Vietnam, I know who to contact.
Yes, please.
So what are your future goals and aspirations in your career, contributions to the legal and financial sectors in Vietnam?
I can say that I want to help Vietnam to make Vietnam the leading financial market and leading country for foreign investment in Southeast Asia in the next decade. And I want to work as long as I can for my law firm, Duane Morris, which has wonderful management partners. Thank you.
Nice. So this was very, very insightful. Thank you so much, Oli, for your time. I know you're a busy man. It's hard to take time from you, but I'm very grateful that you shared a lot of expertise and experiences with us. And now I have a fancy little question. That is, would you like to say something as a closing statement for our audience? But you have to say it in Vietnamese as well.
Tôi chào tất cả các bạn. Tôi là Oliver Massman, làm việc 25 năm luật sư ở Việt Nam. Tôi muốn giúp cho Việt Nam phát triển. Tôi muốn giúp cho Việt Nam go lên và thắng được số 1 tại châu Á. Tôi cảm ơn bạn rất nhiều.
Now translate it for me as well. I don't understand what he said.
I'm Oliver Massman, and I'm in Vietnam since 25 years. And my goal is still to help Vietnam to get developed, to help Vietnam to achieve number one as a leading country in Southeast Asia.
Awesome. That's awesome. I'm sure you will do a lot of good for Vietnam. So I think we have covered everything. To our listeners, thank you for tuning into the executives this week. If you found this episode valuable, don't forget to subscribe and also share it with your network. Until next time, this is Majid signing off.